Great morning. We back with another video. And buenos dias to you guys. I hope y'all having a blessed morning. Today we're gonna read the last three chapters of Exodus, and that's Exodus 38, 39, and 40. And then we'll move on to Leviticus. All right, so let's get started. Exodus 38, the altar for burning offerings. Then Bezalel used acacia wood to build the altar. This was the altar used for burning offerings. The altar was square. It was 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide, and 3 cubits high. He made a horn for each of the 4 corners of the altar. He joined each horn to its corner so that everything was one piece. He covered the altar with bronze. Then he used bronze to make all the tools to be used on the altar. He made the pots, shovels, bowls, forks, and pans. Then he made a bronze grating for the altar. This grating was shaped like a net. The grating was put under the ledge at the bottom of the altar. It went halfway up into the altar from below. Then he made bronze rings to hold the poles for carrying the altar. He put the rings at the 4 corners of the grating. Then he used acacia wood to make the poles and covered them with bronze. He put the poles through the rings on the sides of the altar to carry it. He used boards to make the sides of the altar. It was hollow, like an empty box. He made the bowl and its base with bronze. He used the bronze mirrors that the women gave. These were the women who served at the entrance of the meeting tent, the courtyard around the holy tent. Then he made a wall of curtains around the courtyard. On the south side, he made a wall of curtains 100 cubits long. The curtains were made from fine linen. The curtains on the south side were supported by 20 posts. The posts were on 20 bronze bases. The hooks from the posts and the curtain rods were made from silver. The north side of the courtyard also had a wall of curtains 100 cubits long. There were 20 posts with 20 bronze bases. The hooks for the posts and the curtain rods were made from silver. On the west side of the courtyard, the wall of curtains was 50 cubits long. There were 10 posts and 10 bases. The hooks for the posts and the curtain rods were made from silver. The east side of the courtyard was 50 cubits wide. The entrance to the courtyard was on this side. On one side of the entrance of the wall of the curtains, was 15 cubits long. There were 3 posts and 3 bases on this side. The wall of curtains on the other side of the entrance was also 15 cubits long. There were 3 posts and 3 bases on that side. All the curtains around the courtyard were made from fine linen. The bases for the posts were made from bronze. The hooks and the curtain rods were made from silver. The tops of the posts were covered with silver also. All the posts in the courtyard had silver curtain rods. The curtain for the entrance of the courtyard was made from fine linen in blue, purple, and red yarn. Designs were woven into that curtain. The curtain was 20 cubits long and 5 cubits high. It was the same height as the curtains around the courtyard. The curtain was supported by the 4 posts and 4 bronze bases. The hooks on the posts were made from silver. The tops of the posts were covered with silver, and the curtain rods were also made from silver. All the tent pegs for the holy tent and for the curtains around the courtyard were made from bronze. Moses commanded the Levites to write down everything that was used to make the holy tent, that is, the tent of the agreement. Ithamar, son of Aaron, was in charge of keeping the list. Bezalel, from the tribe of Judah, made everything the Lord commanded Moses. Also, Aholiab, from the tribe of Dan, helped him. Aholiab was a skilled worker and designer. He was skilled at weaving fine linen in blue, purple, and red yarn. The people gave over a ton of gold as offering to the Lord for his holy place. All the men 20 years old or older were counted. Each man had to pay a tax of 1 beka of silver. There were 603,550 men, so they collected about 75,550 pounds of silver. They used most of the silver to make 100 bases for the holy tent and its curtains, 75 pounds for each base. They used the remaining 44 pounds of silver to make the hooks, the curtains, and the silver covers for the posts. They gave more than 2.5 tons of bronze. That bronze was used to make the bases at the entrance of the meeting tent. They also used the bronze to make the altar and the bronze grating. The bronze was used to make all the tools and dishes for the altar. It was also used to make the bases for the curtains around the courtyard and the bases for the curtains at the entrance. And the bronze was used to make the tent pegs for the holy tent and for the curtains around the courtyard. The priest's special clothes, Exodus 39. The workers used the blue, purple, and red yarn to make special clothes for the priests to wear when they served in the holy place. They also made the special clothes for Aaron as the Lord had commanded Moses. The ephod. They made the ephod from gold thread, fine linen, and blue, purple, and red yarn. They hammered the gold into thin strips and cut the gold into long threads. They wove the gold into the blue, purple, and red yarn and fine linen. This was the work of a very skilled person. They made the shoulder pieces for the ephod. They tied these shoulder pieces to the two corners of the ephod. They wove the cloth belt and fastened it to the ephod. It was made the same way. They used gold, thread, fine linen, and blue, purple, and red yarn, just as the Lord commanded Moses. The workers put the onyx stones for the ephod in gold settings. They wrote the names of the sons of Israel on these stones. Then they put these jewels on the shoulder pieces of the ephod. These jewels were to help God to remember the Israelites. This was done as the Lord commanded Moses. The judgment pouch. Then they made the judgment pouch. It was the work of a skilled person, just like the ephod. It was made from gold threads, fine linen, and blue, purple, and red yarn. The judgment pouch was folded in half to make a square pocket. It was 1 span long and 1 span wide. Then the workers put 4 rows of beautiful jewels on the judgment pouch. The first row had a ruby, a topaz, and a beryl. The second row had a turquoise, a sapphire, and an emerald. The third row had a jacinth, and agate, and an amethyst. The fourth row had a chrysolite, an onyx, and a jasper. All these jewels were set in gold. There were 12 jewels on the judgment pouch, 1 jewel for each of the sons of Israel. Each stone had the name of one of the sons of Israel carved onto it like a seal. The workers made 2 chains from pure gold for the judgment pouch. The chains were braided like a rope. The workers made 2 gold rings and fastened them to 2 corners of the judgment pouch. Then they made 2 gold settings for the shoulder pieces. They fastened the gold chains to the rings at the corner of the judgment pouch. They fastened the other ends of the gold chains to the settings on the shoulder pieces. They fastened these to the front of the ephod. Then they made 2 more gold rings and put them on the other 2 corners of the judgment pouch. This was on the inside edge of the judgment pouch next to the ephod. They also put 2 gold rings on the bottom of the shoulder pieces on the front of the ephod. These rings were near the fastener, just above the cloth belt. Then they used a blue ribbon and tied the rings of the judgment pouch to the rings of the ephod. In this way, the judgment pouch would rest close to the cloth belt and would be held tight against the ephod. They did everything just as the Lord commanded. Other clothes for the priests. Then they made the robe for the ephod from blue cloth. It was woven by a skilled worker. They made a hole in the center of the robe and sewed a piece of cloth around the edge of this hole. This cloth kept the hole from tearing. Then they used the fine linen and blue, purple, and red yarn to make the cloth pomegranates. They hung these pomegranates around the bottom edge of the robe. Then they made bells from pure gold. They hung these bells around the bottom edge of the robe between the pomegranates. Around the bottom edge of the robe, there were bells and pomegranates. There was a bell following each pomegranate. This robe was for the priest to wear when he served the Lord. It was made just as the Lord commanded Moses. Skilled workers wove shirts around Aaron and his sons. These shirts were made from fine linen, and the workers made a turban from fine linen. They also used fine linen to make cloth caps and other cloths. Then they made the cloth belt from the fine linen in blue, purple, and red yarn. Designs were sewn into the cloth. These things were made as the Lord commanded Moses. Then they made a strip of pure gold for the holy crown. They carved these words into the gold like the writing on a seal, holy to the Lord. They fastened the gold strip to a blue ribbon. Then they tied the blue ribbon around the turban like the Lord had commanded Moses. Moses inspects the holy tent. So all of the work on the holy tent, that is, the meeting tent, was finished. The Israelites did everything just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then they showed the holy tent and everything in it to Moses. They showed him the rings, the frames, the braces, the posts, and the bases. They showed him the covering of the tent that was made from ram skins dyed red, and the covering that was made from fine leather. And they showed him the curtain that covered the entrance to the most holy place. They showed Moses the box of the agreement, the poles used for carrying it, and the mercy cover. They showed him the table with everything on it, and the special bread. They showed him the pure gold lampstand and the lamps on it, the oil, and all the other things that were used with the lamps. They showed Moses the golden altar, the anointing oil, and the sweet-smelling incense, and the curtain that covered the entrance of the tent. They showed him the bronze altar, the bronze screen, the poles used for carrying the altar, and everything that was used on the altar. They showed him the bowl and the base under the bowl. They showed Moses all the wall of curtains around the courtyard with the posts and bases. They showed him the curtain that covered the entrance to the courtyard. They showed him the ropes and tent pegs. They showed him everything in the holy tent, that is, the meeting tent. Then they showed Moses the clothes that were made for the priest serving the holy area. They showed him the special clothes for Aaron and the priest and his sons. They showed him the special clothes for Aaron the priest and his sons to wear when they were served as priests. The Israelites did all this work exactly as the Lord had commanded Moses. Moses looked closely at all the work and saw that it was done exactly as the Lord had commanded. So Moses blessed them. Exodus 40. Moses sets up the holy tent. Then the Lord said to Moses, on the first day of the first month, set up the holy tent, that is, the meeting tent. Put the box of the agreement in the holy tent. Cover the box of the agreement with the curtain. Then bring in the table. Put in the things on the table that should be there. Then put the lampstand in the tent. Put the lamps on the lampstand in the right places. Put the golden altar for offering incense in the tent in front of the box of the agreement. Then put the curtain at the entrance to the holy tent. Put the altar for burning offerings in the front of the entrance of the holy tent, that is, the meeting tent. Put the bowl between the meeting tent and the altar. Put water in the bowl. Set up the wall of curtains around the courtyard. Then put the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. Use anointing oil and anoint the holy tent and everything in it. When you put the oil on these things, you will make them holy. Anoint the altar for burning offerings. Anoint everything on the altar. You will make the altar holy. It will be very holy. Then anoint the bowl and the base under it to make these things holy. Bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the meeting tent. Wash them with water. Then put the special clothes on Aaron. Anoint him with the oil and make him holy. Then he can serve as a priest. Serve me as a priest. Then put the clothes on his sons. Anoint the sons in the same way you anointed their father. Then they can also serve me as priests. When you anoint them, they will become priests. Their family will continue to be priests for all time to come. Moses obeyed the Lord. He did everything that the Lord commanded him. So the holy tent was set up at the right time. It was the first day of the first month during the second year from the time they left Egypt. Moses set up the holy tent just as the Lord said. He put bases down first. Then he put the frames on the bases. Then he put the braces on and set up the posts. After that, Moses put the outer tent over the holy tent. Then he put the covering over the outer tent. He did these things just as the Lord had commanded. Moses took the the agreement and put it in the holy box. He put the poles on the box and put the mercy cover on it. Then Moses put the holy box into the holy tent. He hung the curtain in the right place to protect it. In this way, he protected the box of the agreement behind the curtain just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses put the table in the meeting tent on the north side of the holy tent. He put it in the holy place in front of the curtain. Then he put the bread on the table before the Lord. He did this just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses put the lampstand in the meeting tent on the south side of the tent, across from the table. Then Moses put the lamps on the lampstand before the Lord. He did this just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses put the golden altar in the meeting tent in front of the curtain. Then he burned sweet-smelling incense on the altar. He did this as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses put the curtain at the entrance of the holy tent. Moses put the altar for burning offerings at the entrance of the holy tent, that is, the meeting tent. Then Moses offered a burnt offering on the altar. He also offered grain offerings to the Lord. He did these things just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses put the bowl between the meeting tent and the altar. He put water in the bowl for washing. Moses, Aaron, and Aaron's sons used the bowl to wash their hands and feet. They washed themselves every time they entered the meeting tent. They also washed themselves every time they went near the altar. They did these things just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then Moses set up the curtains around the courtyard of the holy tent. He put the altar in the courtyard. Then he put the curtains at the entrance of the courtyard. So he finished all the work. The glory of the Lord. Then the cloud covered the meeting tent, and the glory of the Lord filled the holy tent. Moses could not go into the meeting tent because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord had filled the holy tent. When the cloud rose from the holy tent, the Israelites would begin to travel. But when the cloud stayed on the holy tent, the people did not try to move. They stayed in that place until the cloud rose. So the cloud of the Lord was over the holy tent during the day, and at night there was a fire in the cloud. So all the Israelites could see the cloud while they traveled. And that is it. All right, so just a summary of everything. We see them setting up everything in the holy tent and in the courtyard around the holy tent, and just getting everything into the places. So setting up everything, making the curtains that's outside that goes around the whole courtyard. And then in Exodus 39, it talks about like the priest's clothes, like it's been talking about this whole, like kind of the whole end of Exodus, how everything gets put together, the ephod, then you got the judgment pouch. Like it's talking about all of those things. Talks about the clothes and everything. And then it talks about Moses inspecting the holy tent, just making sure everything is there and set up just as the Lord told him to. And then Moses himself actually set everything into the places that God wanted them to go. And that was in Exodus 40. And so right at the point when everything is finished and the Lord comes and settles onto the tent, or inside the tent, the glory of the Lord, Moses can't go in, and that's where that's where the story ends. And so it's interesting how now he can't even go into the holy tent right now because the Lord's presence is there. So yeah, so that's it for today, y'all. That's it for today. And as we move on, now we moving into the book of Exodus. Into the book of Leviticus. So stick with me, and we'll get started with the next book of the Bible. All right. Y'all have a blessed day. Peace.